Alright, so right now I'm replacing a slave cylinder, a clutch slave cylinder on a 02 Acura RSX. It calls out in most manuals or write-ups to remove the battery and get rid of the stock intake, but it looks like if you have an aftermarket, you shouldn't have to touch it. I think once we get the battery box out and everything, we should be able to get to the slave cylinder pretty good. Alright, so I've taken the battery out. The next step we're going to do is remove the bracket to this hard line right here. It's one bolt. I believe it's 10 millimeters, and that's basically just to get this so it's flexible and moving around. Okay, so scratch that. It looks like mine is actually not attached. It looks like it's snapped off or it's broken off, so obviously don't torque on that. If yours is similar, all we need it to be is loose. And again, this is kind of like a snap, a plastic snap thing. It's supposed to be, this thing looks like it's been, it's not the first time it's been touched. So we are going to move on. Alright, so what I ended up doing is actually removing those two mounting bolts for the slave cylinder. So I'm removing those two bolts. I actually used a breaker bar, and it was pretty easy. This car's from New England, so I've got some frozen nasty rusty crusty crap on it. Okay, so I got the two bolts out. Now this thing basically just kind of slides out. It's just kind of in place. If you pull the clutch lever back, this thing should just pop right out. Alright, so you can see my glove is full of nasty, dirty hydraulic fluid, and that's just from under the boot. And I mean, if you look inside, look at this thing, it's just soaked. So this thing is definitely bad. Alright, so now we get the slave cylinder right where we want it, where we can access the fitting. Basically what it is it's all goes into a rubber hose in the back there, so that's why you're able to just manipulate this thing, just move it around really wherever you can, and it's just so much easier to get to that fitting there. We're going to take our 17-inch open-end wrench and hold the bottom, the spinner bolt down. Then we're going to grab our 10 millimeter flare nut open-end wrench. Make sure you use a flare nut wrench. It just makes it a less chance of stripping them and just having a nightmare of having to replace hoses and all that stuff. Alright, so now we're getting somewhere. This one wasn't easy. You use the right tools. I suppose I could have found one with more points on it, but key here was vice grips on the bottom flange, and they're rubber, so they just grab right onto here. So the thing's actually moving now. I was having some problems with it, so we're on our way, friends. And there it is. And we still managed to salvage our hardware. It's a little buggered up, but I'll work with that. I was online last night, looking at steel braided lines. I was like, oh man, I'm never gonna get this thing off. I was looking at, they've got a kit I guess it's just like a custom line. It's all steel braided, and it just goes, instead of this ridiculous design where they have this hard line that goes into, you know, the rubber, into the clamp here, and then into a rubber hose, and then back to a hard line. So when you actually have to order the, you know, if you actually break one of these, I mean, this is New England. This is what our hardware looks like when you take it on salty roads. Alright, so we're going to start installing the new slave cylinder. I'm going to put a little anti-seize on this, on the end of this thing. Just a little tiny bit. I noticed the old one was pretty rusty, and it's just a basic metal to metal contact, so it's never a bad idea to do that. And what we're going to do before we mount this thing is we'll get the fitting on there, so you know we minimize the chance of any cross threading. Alright, so once you've got your line threaded in, this is how it's supposed to be. It's supposed to spin like that. Again, you have to hold the hands with the 17mm and crank the thing down. Put a little bit of anti-seize on our mounting bolts, and we are going to mount this thing in. Another thing to note, this bleeder valve is it's 8mm, and what I did before I'm gonna mount this thing is I cracked it because it was pretty tight. I just cranked it back on a little bit, just so when it's in there, you know, I'm not wrestling around trying to manhandle the thing to get it to crack loose. So just a cocktail tidbit there. Okay, one more thing I want to mention before I mount this thing. Usually these things, when you get them, the rod doesn't really push in that easily, so before you get it in there, just kind of pump it a couple times. Do this before you know, you've got open lines and everything. I did it when I pulled it out of the bag, and that's just, you know, obviously so when you get it in there, it doesn't, you know, the first time you hit the pedal, it doesn't like bend one way and then, you know, go off where it's not supposed to be. Okay, so we got our new slave cylinder mounted in. We've got our hard line torqued down, and our bleeder valve is ready to be cracked open. I'm gonna go ahead and make sure that this thing is topped off. It looks like it's pretty low. I'll put some .3 or 4 brake fluid in there. I'm gonna try the gravity method, see how that works out. I'll just kind of let some fluid run through it. Ew. That shit is nasty. Okay, so everything's back together. I just bled this system. I did use the gravity method. I was a little skeptical at first, but when I thought about it, it actually makes a lot of sense to do it that way, because when you install your slave, it's fully depressed. So the piston's actually, it's trying to push stuff out. So immediately, you know, I filled up and made sure to, you know, to fill my reservoir. And immediately when I cracked that bleeder, it started pouring out. And I remember on my old one, I tried to bleed the thing and nothing came out at all. So I'm definitely a fan of the gravity bleed if you're just doing, I don't know if it works, you know, if you're doing clutch master cylinder and everything, but I mean, it was real simple. A couple times, you know, the first time I let it out, I closed the bleeder. I put the cap back on to the reservoir. I pumped it a bunch of times. I repeat, and the pedal feels nice and tight. You want to pay attention after you're pumping and doing all, putting all this pressure in your lines after you've been messing with them. You want to check your flanges, especially the one going into the slave. In the beginning, it was actually, there was a little bit of fluid coming out of the top, so I had to crank it down a little bit more than I did initially. So definitely pay attention to that, so you're not losing fluid once you get up and going. So while I get this thing out, it doesn't hurt to clean up the terminals. And this nasty ass thing. Ugh. Alright, so we got everything back together. Gonna start the car up and make sure there's no surprises in any of the hoses or in the clutch system. I don't think it should change, but you never know. Pedal feels good, but we'll see.
Thanks a lot for watching, everyone, and also a big thank you to all my new subscribers. I'll be making a test drive video, so if you want to check that out, make sure you subscribe, and I'll see you soon.